Hey everybody, hope you guys are having a good day today. Obviously, some devastating news, Russia invading Ukraine. I am not going to do a video about geopolitical events because I am not a political analyst. I'm not going to touch base on that, but what I think I might do in this video and what I've presented to you, or what I've compiled for you guys, is just kind of what I've seen recently and just a historical framework from some of the things that Russia has been doing from a digital asset and cryptocurrency standpoint. And there's a lot of information here. It's not going to be a super long video. I've tried to consolidate it as much as possible. But first and foremost, we heard so much rhetoric today. I watched Biden's press conference. So many questions, and even like, regardless of where you're at, Fox News or CNBC or whatever you're watching in the U.S., they kept talking about SWIFT. SWIFT is essentially the transfer mechanism for payments in the across the entire globe. Obviously, very much so attached to the United States dollar. There's going to be a lot of information in this video. Maybe you know it all. Maybe you don't. And hopefully, I can provide some sort of value to you guys. I'm going to try to do it in the most unbiased way possible. Certainly want to give my condolences to anybody affected by what's going on in Ukraine right now. And yeah, I mean, it's certainly a sad day, but it's interesting to me because there's so much information, and even very, very recent information that is just not being talked about on mainstream media, and I'll call it media because it's not news. But yeah, and you can't get news unless you're actually like delving out and trying to find it for yourself. And hopefully I can give you a little bit of what I found for myself in this video. So, we all know Russia invaded Ukraine today. So I started looking directly into how some of the BRICS nations were responding. If you are not aware, BRICS was an acronym that it was coined to associate 5 major emerging economies, and they've got a lot of aligning initiatives. Those nations are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. We can see China coming out a little bit earlier today, refusing to call the Russian attack on Ukraine an invasion and deflecting blame to the United States. We can see Brazil not directly condemning the Russian invasion either, but the vice president of Brazil stating that he is in support of Ukraine. I'm curious, and this video is going to be a little bit too in-depth to try to figure out what South Africa or India has stated upon the matter. And again, I'm not going to get into geopolitical and politics and all that stuff and what different nations are saying, but I do find it interesting, and you'll see here in a second why, because essentially we heard a lot about SWIFT today, and I will talk about SWIFT as well and just how big they are. But we've seen in the past that China, Russia, Brazil, India, I mean, all these nations are trying to kind of to remove themselves from the SWIFT system anyways, and this has been in process for a year. So, or years. But I did find this interesting today, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into this video, by the way. I haven't done a deep dive in a while. But this came out today, and it was just interesting. So can BRICS de-dollarize the global financial system? I just found it incredibly interesting timing. But moving forward on this is kind of the sanctions that came out today. So they are not removing... they're not removing Russia from the SWIFT system, at least as far as the sanctions that we've heard right now. But what they have done is essentially frozen any assets, any Russian bank assets in the United States, and I believe the UK did the same thing as well. 2 banks stuck out from this. Now, number 1 is VTB, which I believe is the second largest bank in Russia, and number 2 is Sberbank. These are both essentially cut off from the United States standpoint as far as the Russian assets. So Sberbank rang a bell, and I looked 2019. We can see there was a platform called Money Rebel that did support Bitstamp, which we do know is XRapid enabled. Vanguard and Sberbank were tied into this, just to showcase. Now this is old, so take it with a grain of salt. We're going to get into some of the newer stuff as well here, but you can see the accounts within Money Rebel's platform here. You've got a Sberbank account, crypto wallet, Bitstamp exchange, and a Vanguard account. Obviously, Vanguard is huge. They've got SWIFT interactivity and everything within that, but also the Money Rebel platform provided by the Ripple protocol. And talking about money remittance, which would be fiat to crypto, which back then, and I haven't looked into Money Rebel recently, but I do remember this just because of Sberbank, that fiat to crypto functionality, that bridge aspect, appeared to be alluded to within this document. Now, we also saw VTB. Now, VTB is I was doing targeted searches because Euronet Worldwide, which is obviously a pretty big payments integrator, money transfer integrator company, had released or partnered with this Dandelion product, which is like RIA, and RIA is very big, I believe, even in like India, stuff like that. But the VTB targeted searches that I was doing led me to this central bank of Russia, certainly testing the Ripple platform, going as far as to say that it was concluded that the Ripple platform can be considered as the basis for starting work on creating a system of cross-border settlements. And they talk about XRP transfers as well. Now, what I really want to get into here is kind of the more recent news. So this was a lot of rhetoric coming out today. The SWIFT banking system could be used as a sanction against Russia. Now, we have seen, obviously, that isn't the case so far. But if you're not aware of what SWIFT is, and there's a lot more information than this out there, but this is just kind of the bird's eye view. SWIFT is obviously not a bank. It doesn't transfer funds. It essentially transfers payment messages, right? And then the settlement and the clearing and the settlement happens on the back end. But SWIFT is literally like 11,000 financial institutions, 200 countries. I mean, we're talking an insane amount of volume that is running through SWIFT. I mean, arguably almost, I forget the statistics, but if I had to gauge a guess, I would say 95% of the world utilizes SWIFT at this point in time. 42 million messages per day, which is an 11% increase from the year before. 1.5% of those transactions did come out of Russia. But we saw all the way back in 2019 that Russia, China, and India, so that again, we see the BRICS, at least 3 of the BRICS nations setting up an alternative to SWIFT payment system to connect 3 billion people. Now, if this was being tested or announced in 2019, it had probably been tested much longer than this. And again, Russia could use cryptocurrency to blunt the force of U.S. sanctions. We saw this today. I'm going to get through a little bit of this. This isn't necessarily fluff, but Binance executive to lead crypto expert centered by Russian Bank Association. This was about a week and a half ago. Now, this association is 300 banks, financial institutions in Russia, which covers 90% of the country's banking infrastructure. Okay, now, this is where I'm getting into the bread and butter of this video, because this is way, way, way more recent. Now, this is Russia plans to allow crypto mining and gold-backed stablecoins. This was January 25th. What I find very interesting within this is talking about a gold-backed stablecoin similar to the golden ruble. The parliamentary elaborated, claiming that Russia could employ a gold-backed stablecoin, gold-backed crypto stablecoin, to circumvent sanctions or to go around sanctions and the policy of containment applied against the country. All right, so that's coming out the 25th of January from the parliament. And Russia, about a week later, issued Atomyze, the first license in the nation to issue digital financial assets. This is coming from the Russian Central Bank. Given Atomyze Russia, a blockchain platform, a license to issue and exchange digital financial assets, marking the first firm to be legally able to do so in Russia. Didn't talk about anything too crazy in here. So when I saw this earlier this month, I looked into Atomyze, and the rabbit hole goes deep, my friends. So remember, essentially the first government and central bank regulated platform in Russia that deals directly in the issuance of crypto assets is dealing directly in asset-backed tokens. Now, pay attention to Palladium here, because this is where the rabbit hole goes a little bit deeper. But and what we just heard from the parliament saying that essentially a gold-backed stablecoin could potentially be utilized. I'm not saying it's going to be. Could potentially be utilized to circumvent sanctions. Palladium, platinum, gold, silver, and copper. Nickel as well, cobalt. All right. This is some of the more recent research that I was doing today. This is Vladimir Putin, and this gentleman was formerly the first deputy prime minister of Russia, but also the second wealthiest man in Russia, the 10th richest person in the world with an estimated net worth of $87 billion. What's interesting about this is it talks about some of the other platforms, but it talks about his holdings and his investment into this Atomyze platform. He is an investor into Atomyze, which utilizes blockchain to turn real assets ranging from metals to homes into tokens that can easily be exchanged. Okay, moving forward a little bit, this is Nornickel. And Nornickel essentially announcing this Global Palladium Fund. Now, the Global Palladium Fund, established by Norris Nickel, the world's largest producer of palladium and high-grade nickel and a major producer of platinum and copper, issuing the first tokens. Guess what platform those tokens were issued on? They were issued on the global tokenization platform, Atomyze. We can see here that Nornickel actually owns and operates Atomyze. Atomyze is a subsidiary of Nornickel. Moving forward, why does all of this matter? Well, Russia has been building up a stockpile of gold reserves for quite some time. I know that their holdings of gold are now outweighing their holdings of the USD. The IMF puts together a chart, and I'm sure I'll get comments in here saying that this is probably even skewed, but close to 2,400 tons. Now, this is 2,302 tons of gold, the fifth largest gold holdings behind the U.S., Germany, Italy, and France, and this chart was as of 2021. I just find it very, very interesting that Russia, their parliament, essentially talking about potentially being able to circumvent sanctions by a gold-backed stablecoin, and then a week later awarding Atomyze this first digital license. Now, I believe that Atomyze's parent company, Nornickel, is also a member of Hyperledger. I was looking at that today. We can see Atomyze dealing very much so in palladium and deep ties into the world's largest palladium producer. I mean, it's the Global Palladium Fund, right? Platinum, gold, silver, copper, and nickel. We can see the 10th richest person in the world, the second richest person in Russia, former, Deputy Prime Minister, former first Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, an investor into this tokenization platform for precious metals. You can see Nornickel and their industrial partners. I tried looking into Traxxas and Umicore, but just didn't want to make this video too overwhelming. But the ties go deep. Atomyze certainly, could potentially be maybe a contingency plan as far as tokenizing precious metals. I don't think that Russia's been accumulating precious metals for no reason, especially gold and their gold reserves. And, I am sure that I'm missing some things in here. Again, I'm trying to present just some unbiased things that I've seen. It's interesting because, all I kept hearing on Fox News and CNBC was the very bare bones base definition of SWIFT, saying, well, couldn't Biden remove Russia from the SWIFT system? Now, I don't think that's Biden's decision. I believe that there's a lot of big players across the globe, very much so dealing in the SWIFT system. And from my understanding, one of the EU nations or portions of the EU are actually against removing Russia from the SWIFT system. And I believe that it's got to be kind of deemed necessary from all hands involved, because SWIFT, I don't think Biden even has the power to do that necessarily. But there are tons. If you just do a Twitter advanced search, I found tons of stuff in the past, and I'm just trying to provide a little bit of value, hopefully, to you guys. Again, my condolences to anybody affected by this. Paying attention to what the BRICS nations are talking about, certainly paying attention to what's going on. As far as looking at the actual forest and not just the trees in this situation. But again, you never like to see things escalate like this, but I certainly believe that everything probably surrounds itself around money and power, and we are just seeing that again, and it's a sad day for everybody right now. But pay attention. I don't think that it's by mistake that we've seen a few years now where Russia, China, India, these BRICS nations essentially trying to remove themselves from the SWIFT system. And then even more recently, this is crazy that this was January 25th, about a month ago, and their parliament talking about circumventing sanctions. And then their first national license that Russia awards is to Atomyze, and they're tokenizing precious metals. And we can see, I am sure, and I didn't want to go too deep down the rabbit hole here because there's things that I'm just not comfortable posting publicly. But there's there's some really interesting connections probably within all of this. So I hope I maybe threw some names out there, some research topics for you all, and I hope you guys enjoy your day. And if you can, and certainly stay safe out there. Kudos, and I appreciate all you guys. So I'll talk to you later.